Okay, so what if I told you the key to overthrowing capitalism wasn't a protest, but pleasure? Not a massive march, but a whole new way of experiencing desire. Well, that was the absolutely radical idea at the core of Herbert Marcuse's 1955 book, Eros and Civilization. It's this wild utopian vision that basically weaponized joy against the grind of the modern world. And get this, he was thinking about this way back in 1938. Marcuse was already arguing that if we experienced real sexual liberation, it would make the drudgery of modern work feel so completely pointless that the entire system would just collapse. This was a huge challenge, not just to capitalism, but to a couple of other big groups. For traditional Marxists, a revolution starting in the bedroom? No way. And for Freudians, well, they thought desire was something you had to control, not unleash. So, to really understand Marcuse's crazy optimism, we first have to dig into the super pessimistic idea he was trying to tear down. And that means we need to talk about Sigmund Freud. Because for Freud, civilization was kind of a raw deal, and our happiness was the price we all had to pay to get in. At our very core, Freud said we're all just driven by the pleasure principle. This is our primal, instinctive side, the id, and it wants what it wants right now. You can think of it like the little toddler inside all of us, you know? The one that demands cookies immediately and wants to avoid a nap at all costs. But then, of course, comes the big, hard lesson of life. Freud called it the reality principle. This is that tough moment when we figure out, oh, I can't have everything I want. Society has rules. We have to share. To get by and live with other people, we have to push down those primal urges. We learn to wait. And yeah, we have to get to work. And for Freud, this is the deal. It's permanent. It's non-negotiable. To have the security of civilization, we have to trade away some of our instinctual freedom. It's a pretty bleak way of looking at it, right? It basically means that any organized society is built on a foundation of our own unhappiness. All right, so this is where Marcuse comes crashing in. He looks at Freud's ironclad rule and asks this totally game-changing question. What if not all of this repression is actually necessary? What if some of it is just there to prop up a specific oppressive system? And here's his brilliant move. He splits repression into two types. First, there's basic repression. This is the stuff we actually need to get along. You know, like, don't steal your neighbor's food. Simple. But then he says there's surplus repression. This is all the extra stuff, all the extra anxiety and rules that are piled on top. Not for survival, but just to keep a particular system, like capitalism, humming along. He even gives this surplus repression a name, the performance principle. He argues that under this principle, our lives aren't really about meeting our own genuine needs anymore. We just become cogs in a huge machine that we don't control, performing these jobs that were set up long before we got there. Society basically teaches us to want what the system needs us to want, turning our own desires into tools that serve the machine. Now, to get a real feel for how much these kinds of ideas were in the air back in the 50s, we need to take a quick and kind of bizarre detour. We need to talk about another, way more controversial figure who was also obsessed with sex and freedom. Let's meet this strange and ultimately tragic prophet of sexual liberation, Wilhelm Reich. Reich's story is a total roller coaster. I mean, he starts out as this influential theorist who Marcuse and his friends are all reading. Then he's an exile in America, building this thing called an orgone energy accumulator, which was basically a box he claimed could harness sexual energy. And from there, it's a fast downhill slide to getting investigated by the FDA and actually dying in a US prison. But what's really wild is who was using his so-called orgone box. This isn't some fringe group. We're talking a who's who of American literature. J.D. Salinger, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, all these literary giants were apparently sitting in Reich's machine, looking for some kind of liberation. It just shows you how far his influence really went. So you gotta ask, right? Why did the US government go after this guy so hard? Was it really just about him being a medical quack? Or was there something genuinely threatening about a Marxist psychoanalyst preaching sexual freedom in the middle of the buttoned-down, conformist world of Cold War America? But here is where Marcuse drew a very clear line in the sand. He thought Reich made a huge mistake by focusing so narrowly on, well, the physical act of orgasm. For Marcuse, true liberation wasn't just about having more sex. It was about something bigger. It was about re-eroticizing our entire lives, our work, our play, our art, everything, by finally breaking free from that performance principle. And, these weren't just abstract debates happening in university halls. These were deeply personal, high stakes battles over what the future of society should look like. And they could absolutely destroy friendships. Which brings us to the really bitter feud between Herbert Marcuse and his former friend and colleague, Erich Fromm. So, Fromm and Marcuse, they both wanted the same thing, a sane society. But they completely clashed on how to get there. Fromm was a bit more of an optimist. He believed people could find real love and creativity even inside a flawed system like capitalism. Marcuse thought that was just dangerous positive thinking. He felt it just helped people get used to their own oppression, making them feel better about a bad situation. And what's fascinating is that they actually started from a pretty similar place. Fromm had this powerful idea he called the marketing character. It's this personality type that sees themselves as a product. You package your skills, your personality, even your smile, all to sell yourself on the job market. It's a really sharp critique of how alienated we can become. But here, right here, is the core of their disagreement. It's captured perfectly in this quote from Marcuse's colleagues. See, Fromm's whole idea depended on an individual person being able to freely choose love and creativity. But for Marcuse and the Frankfurt School, that kind of individual was basically a myth. They saw that person as a quaint little corner shop that had been made totally obsolete by the giant supermarket of mass culture and corporate power. And this fight, it got ugly. It spilled out into the public pages of Dissent magazine, and it got so nasty that it completely destroyed their friendship. I mean, for good. There's a story that years later, Fromm saw Marcuse on a train and just deliberately looked the other way. It's actually a pretty sad reminder of the real human cost of these big, revolutionary ideas. So their friendship became a casualty of the past, but the central question they were fighting over, can we be truly free inside our current system? Man, that is more relevant today than ever. I mean, does Marcuse's critique of meaningless work and this surplus repression have anything to say about our world of hustle culture, bullshit jobs, and being connected 24/7?
15. What's that? Well, back in 1930, the famous economist John Maynard Keynes made a prediction. He said that by the end of the century, technology would be so good that we'd only have to work 15-hour weeks. So, how'd that work out for us?
Well, let's fast forward to 2013. The anthropologist David Graeber wrote about this phenomenon of what he called bullshit jobs. And it just echoes Marcuse's point perfectly. Technology didn't free us. Instead, as Graeber puts it so powerfully, we've used it to make ourselves work even more, often on jobs we secretly believe are completely pointless. And this comes right back to Marcuse's central argument. He said that for advanced societies like ours, real scarcity isn't the problem anymore. We have the technology, we have the resources to create a better, freer life for everyone. The problem, he said, is that the system uses the idea of scarcity, the ideology of constant work, to keep us in line, to keep us under control. And that leaves us with Marcuse's huge, haunting question. It's maybe more relevant now than when he first asked it. If our technology has the incredible power to liberate us, to give us more free time, to unleash our creativity, then why has it so often been used to do the exact opposite? It's a question that really forces us to look around and rethink everything, the purpose of our jobs, our tech, and maybe most importantly, what kinds of pleasure we even allow ourselves to imagine.